Hello, and welcome to the 19th BOH Cameronian Arts Awards on set. My name is Miriam, and joining me today are Dominic and Scott, the nominees for Best Director in a Musical Theatre. So let's get to it. I'd like to begin by just asking, how many years have you been in this industry, and what's your journey been like as a director?
I think it's been about 18, 19 years. Started out doing lots of music directing, like just working with singers, vocal directing shows, being in theatre by accident in college, and then just started to do more shows. And I think that just led into, from being in shows, realizing that I love directing a bit more than being in a show, a bit less nerve-wracking for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just getting creative, I think that was something that appealed to me more than being the actor on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. And Scott, what about you?
I first started directing at 13.
Wow.
I had a camcorder and I was directing short films in the neighbourhood and would put them into festivals and that. And I'd done that. That was it. I was a filmmaker, you know, and just doing this. And it was like every film, this is the one.
This is going to get me in,
This
yes.
is the one that's going to get me. You know, Hollywood's going to come knocking.
Yes.
But yeah, and I just carried that on. And then theatre come later because film costs a lot of money. And I returned to film actually after I become more established in theatre actually. But yeah, so I'd say that. So in terms of theatre, yeah, again, like college time, around about that time, like, you know, 17, 18 years old. So I've been doing it a while. I'm not going to do the math. That show the age. But yeah, I've been doing it a while. Musicals for CPAC. I think this is my 13th musical. But in shows, you know, I do shows outside, beyond that. I do plays, I do all sorts of stuff, virtual plays, I do audio plays. So yeah, a long time in the industry and working. You know, I worked in Hong Kong for many years in the film industry, and that's really where I learnt sort of my directing. I was watching all the Hong Kong directors, Choi Hark and Herman Yao, Benny Chan, any of, if there's any Hong Kong fans in there of directors. John Woo as well. And then, you know, went back to England and done some stuff there, you know, intern stuff first as a ASM in theatres and just watched different and had to learn a whole new film and theatres. It's very different, the process. So I had to learn a new way and and then I found myself here in KL. I've been here, for 15 years now.
Nice.
And as I say, working here in theatre for 15 years.
Dominic, what was your approach like to directing once on this island? Especially because there have been stagings of the play. So maybe talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, because it's been staged on Broadway, and it was recently revived. But the process for us here was to bring that story onto our local stage and reach out to the Malaysian audience in a way that they could relate to a story that was not necessarily written by Malaysians for Malaysian audiences, but something that is the story is so powerful and powerful enough for you to sit down there and go, that's me, and that's me. Because it talks about so many things. It's, you know, like not just about race, but it talks about the rich and the poor should not be together because they'll never mix. You are rich, but you cannot marry a poor person. It doesn't have to be about race. It just has to be about class or judgment from family, like parents not approving of the people that you fall in love with, things like that. So I think taking that story and putting it on stage and letting people go, wow, that is me.
I see this.
Yeah, and I think that's how Once on This Island is so powerful, no matter who you are and where you are in the world.
How do you think you extended, through direction, of course, our local view of interracial relationships?
So again, it's not like we didn't highlight that and say this is an interracial relationship. It's so there are two parts of the island and the rich and the poor cannot mix. basically in the story, it's the dark skin and the light skin cannot mix. But we did not take that as the the forefront of the story.
Yeah.
But you understand that these two societies should not be mingling, and we see that all the time. Different races, however you want to interpret it, a race, a class, political views, whatever it is you want, we allowed you to just sit back and think whatever it is that you understand it as. Take it as however you want. So we put that story on the stage, hoping that everyone would find some way to relate to it. Children, even if you don't understand all these, the way society works yet, you might see that, oh yeah, my parents also told me I should not be friends with this person because, whatever it is, race, again, sometimes children don't know, but the parents will say, don't mix with these kids, So that is what ultimately the heartbeat of the story was that we put on stage. Of course, we try to put some local things into it, like batik, visual things locally, things that we could understand as Malaysian audiences.
How important was it for you as a director for younger audiences to understand themselves and the society they live in within the context of spooks?
Well, I think that's an age-old tale. You can take it all the way back to Shakespeare with the Montagues and the Capulets in Romeo and Juliet, right up to Avatar with the blue aliens, and it just keeps regurgitating. It's a theme and a connection that we can always revert to, and in this case, in Spooks, you have the lead character Drusilla, who is half vampire, half human. We've all been there, we know.
Yeah, exactly what it means to be a half human, half vampire.
It's that age-old tale. No, but she's and she's grown up in the human world, so then she's taken to the monster realm, and everything is very different there. So, if you was to take the core of that, I think there are many examples of people just uprooting and having to move, myself included, from the West coming to the East, having to uproot my family and bring them here, and then us having to adjust, people having to adjust to the way I work and to the way, and me to them, vice versa. So it's that, certainly through high school, you start to grow up and you're trying to find your place, even in high school, kids are. Then you add them elements to it. So that's why I wanted to set it at high school, because you're already trying to find who you are. Everybody's trying to find who they are at high school. And then you have these elements of, well, she just doesn't fit in at all here, and she has to find that. And so I think, at the core, when people strip it down, they can relate to it, but they're not aware that they're relating to it because they're saying, well,
I don't walk around with Frankensteins,
Yeah, she's dating a werewolf, and she's a vampire, and they're like, well, it's like the rich and the poor. It doesn't go, man.
It doesn't go.
It doesn't go. Yeah, but no, so on the surface you wouldn't know, but it's only, I think it's more of a thing that you would strip down and think about it and go, well, yeah, you can see, you can see those common concepts there. They're just dressed up in a lot of mythology.
And both of you have talked about, and thank you for sharing those points on how these themes, the differerences that exist in our society, continuously exist in our society, has reverberated through the ages, and we constantly see it in movies and on stage. And with your individual works, what did you hope the audience would take away? Also keeping in mind that there are adults in it, but also young teenagers and children, sort of just growing up with a form of innocence, right? But what did you hope that they would take from it?
For me, the first thing I want the audience to be is, like I always say, it's escapism. They've got to immerse themselves into that world, and that's what I wanted. I want to, forget what you're doing, in a couple of hours' time, or what your day was like at work. To be here and be in the now. And I wrote that in the way that Drusilla is experiencing in real time what the audience are. So she comes to the monster realm as the audience are watching her. So what she sees and all the things that are different and the weird and the characters and everything, the audience are learning with her, you know. So I wanted it kind of that perspective, as opposed to just like it starts with her already there. There are very few kind of like the next day. It's more like just a one continuous. There definitely does go over a shift of time, but I don't make a point of it. So then the audience kind of don't realise that they're just following, and they're on that journey with them, with her, and experiencing some of those difficulties and you know, and also her triumphs and that. So that was kind of the thinking behind the writing and obviously the direction to make that, to make the audience feel that, you know. Her first entrance is on a boat, and she's coming across, but I used the forestage for that.
Okay.
And the forestage is closer to the audience opposed to just have it on the stage. Then she's almost, she's one of them. She's coming from the audience onto the stage, and then they are going to follow her. So that's all done within the idea, the design of it.
I think for Once on This Island, it's because the story, it's a 90-minute story, no intermission, and the audience sits in this intimate space, looking at the island, the sand on the stage, and the whole idea was just to bring the audience into that world of that island, the conflict and the struggles that these people on the island face. And I think what I wanted was, you know, just to help, like Scott said, like help the audience realize that they're now in that moment. No other time in your life will you experience this. The emotions, the mood of each person on stage, and the collective feeling of the audience at that moment. You know, that for me, that's powerful, how we bring whatever's on stage and blend it with the audience, and all these emotions and the energy just create that moment. And I think pulling the audience into that world for 90 minutes to forget about whatever it is they're facing, whatever they left at the door before they walked in. And I think that's important, to bring audiences onto that journey with us. And I love it when, you know, after the whole curtain call has ended and the show has ended, obviously it's time for the audience to leave, but they're still sitting down there because they're brought into that world, their escapism again, and they need time to come back and realize, oh, and I love that. And I see that all the time. And every show in Once on This Island, it was so nice to see audiences just taking that moment to come back. Yeah, and I think that's very powerful. And I think that's why we do theatre. We want audiences to feel that energy.
Yeah, it's the connection. It's the you know, they connect to the material, they connect to the characters.
And connecting to each other in that one space.
And then because they are all, like Dom says, they're all sharing that moment there, so they don't want it to end like that. They have a time, they have a moment.
And that's very powerful for me.
Well, thank you for being a part of the people that create these moments for all of us. And thank you for being here today and joining in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Thank you.